This is going to be the first tutorial on how to make a game in GameMaker. So this is just going to be a quick guide on how to make a maze-like game. We might go into a little bit more depth than just making a maze, but for now that's where we're going to start. So first things first, we're going to make a new game. I'm going to just go to new blank game, and I'm just going to call mine maze game, and I'm going to call mine Maze Game 3 because I've already got a Maze Game 1 and 2 saved in this computer. So I'm going to call it Maze Game 3. I'm going to go to Let's Go, and it's just going to start setting my game up. So what you'll see here is a completely blank screen, and over here we've got a bunch of folders. Now these folders are used to store the things that we're going to be using in our game, such as the objects, so that's things like our player, our walls, our enemies, and over here are the sprites. So this is where we're going to store the pictures that we use for those. We have also got rooms, and I think that's pretty much all we're going to use. We might use tile sets as well, and some sounds, but that's all we're going to use for now. What you'll see is that the rooms folder has already got something in it. You can see it's a sort of darker or a lighter grey than the rest. And if we just click on the arrow to expand it, we'll see that we've already got a room called room 1. So if I double click on that, it gives us this blank room with these tiles. Now what a room is essentially is what you might call a level sometimes in some games. So this is basically going to be our first level in our game. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we are going to want to create a character. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a sprite for that character. So I'm going to go over to Sprites folder, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go to Create Sprite. Now sprite, if you're already into games, you probably already know this, but a sprite is essentially a picture that's used to represent a character or an object within a game. And anything that's drawn, especially with 2D games, we use the word sprite a lot. Anything that's drawn on the screen to represent an object, essentially. So we've got this here. Obviously, there's nothing there at the moment. I'm just going to call here in this box here. Make sure I click on that. I'm going to give this sprite a name, and I'm going to call it sprite. It's a good idea to make sure you put these things before the word sprite before what you're doing. So I'm going to call it sprite underscore player. Press enter. And then I'm going to go over to this box here that says edit image. I'm going to start drawing my sprite. Now I'm just going to make a very basic one for now, just a placeholder. If you're not sure what a placeholder means, it's basically something just there for now. It's not actually going to be the real thing in the final product. So that's going to be my character for now, and I'll make him green. Green is a bit more friendly than red, isn't it? So I'm going to draw a circle. Now this button here, if you click on that, that gives you just an outline. Okay, Control Z to undo. This one here gives you a filled circle. So I'm going for a filled circle, and I'm going to use the paint bucket though to make it green. There we go. So that's it. That's all I want for my sprite for now. Then I'm going to go over to my room. So I'm going to double click on room. So I'm going to go to objects now. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to create, and I want to create an object, and I'm just going to call this object underscore player. So this is the sprite for the player, and this is the object. Now the object is different to a sprite in that I can set a sprite, I can use a sprite I've already created for the player, but the object is basically where I'm going to enter my code to make it work. So I'm going to select the sprite, click on that, I'm going to select the sprite player sprite. I'm going to add an event. The first event I'm going to add is a create. And what the create event does is basically as soon as this character is created on the screen, so basically the second it appears in the level, it runs this code before it runs anything else. And what I'm going to put in the create is just a couple of things for now. So I'm going to put player speed, and I'm going to set that to 4 for now. So what that's going to mean, and it will make more sense later on, but what that's going to mean is that my player is going to move 4 pixels at a time. So whenever I touch the arrow keys, I want my player to move in that particular direction by 4 pixels. But I'm going to set the player speed to 4 for now. So this is a variable. If you remember from when you used Python before, the language that we use in GameMaker, it's called GML, GameMaker language. It's very, very similar to Python, but it's not identical. There are quite a few differences. So I'm going to set player speed to 4, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable here. I'm going to call it x movement, and I'm going to set that to 0. And I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call that y movement, and and I'm also going to set that to 0. And it's a good idea to try and use the same conventions when you're naming your variables, so I'm going to use it like that. So y with a capital M movement and x with a capital M movement. So player speed is 4, x movement is 0, y movement is 0. Now what these x movement and y movement variables are going to do is they're going to be used to determine whether or not our character is actually moving. Obviously at the moment I want it to be 0 because right at the start we don't want the character to walk. We don't want the character to walk until we tell it to. So that's it for the create for now. I'm now going to go to add event. Now I'm going to go to step and step again, and I'm going to click OK again. And what the step events do, anything that's in the step event occurs every single frame of the game. So this game is going to be running at 60 frames per second. So everything in this code will be run 60 times a second. So every line of code that's in here will be run 60 times per second. What I want to do in here is I want to check to see if the player is pressing a button on the keyboard. So to do that, I'm just going to type if keyboard check, so underscore check, and I'm going to put in brackets, CK, I'm going to put in brackets VK up. Okay, so that just means up. And then, unlike Python, where you'd normally put a colon here, we're going to use something slightly different than this. We're going to use the curly brackets, which are just above, on the same button as the square brackets, but I'm going to hold Shift and press it to get those curly brackets there. So hopefully this will let me zoom in a bit with this. So if keyboard check VK up, and then I'm going to go to Y movement. Okay, so that's my Y movement. So obviously, when we think about the axes, maybe on a graph, we've got the x-axis going along the bottom, we've got the y-axis going up and down. So I want to control the Y movement. Okay, so how the player moves using this. And I actually remember now that my variable is actually called Y movement, like that, isn't it? So Y movement equals -1 times player speed. Okay, so what that's going to tell the game to do is basically move the player. We want to move the player by -1 times the player speed. Now, if you remember, the player speed is 4, so that's going to move the player -4 pixels. Okay, why -4? Now, if you look at this chart, you can see that the player, by default, starts at 0, 0, so that's our top corner. So it's kind of the opposite of the way a graph goes. We've got 0, 0, and then by going to move the player down, we'd actually need to increase our y variable to 1, down again, increase the y variable to 2, down to 3, we need to increase the y variable again. So that's the way it works, and that's why we need to decrease our y variable to move the player up. So that player speed, and that's that for checking if it's up. We want to do the same thing now, but now we're going to go else if. Okay, the reason we're going to do else if is because we only want to know if they're pressing down if they're not pressing up. So if they're not pressing up, we're going to check to see if they're pressing down instead. So else if keyboard check, we're going to go VK down this time. And again, curly brackets, and I'm just going to copy this and paste this here. I'm just going to change this to 1 instead of -1, because this time we want the character to go down, so we're going to be increasing the Y of the player. So there's that. Now I'm just going to close that with those curly brackets again. Else if, okay, this time we want to control going left and right, so keyboard check, VK left. We're going to go curly brackets again. We're going to take our X movement equals -1, because we're going to the left. Remember, so like that times the player speed, and we're going to go that. Oh, and I've made a mistake here. So X movement equals, there you go. And I also want to close these brackets there. And last one, else if keyboard check, I'm going to go VK right. And I'm sure you can work out what I'm going to do here is x movement equals 1 times player speed. Put a colon there, and I'm going to, a semicolon rather, and I'm going to close those curly brackets there. Okay, so that's that. So all this is doing at the moment, though, is still not actually making the player move. All it's doing is it's setting my y movement variable to either -4 or 4, or setting my x movement variable to -4 or 4. But it's not actually going to move the character yet. Okay, so what we want to do is set our y. Okay, so that means that's just the players. So this particular object's y location. So y is going to equal y. So that means where the player currently is plus y movement. Okay, so that means that if I currently have, let's say the player's y location is set at 10, and I press the up, which means that they should go, I press the up key, means the character should move up, which means that it should decrease by 4. Okay, what this is going to do is it's going to take my y variable and add -4 to it, which basically means it will go down to 6. So the character should move from position 10 to position 6. This will make a bit more sense in a moment. But y equals y plus the y movement, and x is going to equal x plus the x movement. And I'm going to press that. And then one last thing that we need to do is we just need to, afterwards, okay, because we don't want the character to keep walking forever, we're going to set, once it's done this, once it's moved the character, we want y movement and x movement to go back to 0. So y movement is going to be 0, and x movement is going to be 0. I'll just put those semicolons there. So this should, if I've coded this correctly, which I think I might have, should work for us now. I'm just going to zoom back out. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my room, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my object player in and put it there, and I'm going to go up to the top and press this run button, and I should be able to, if I've coded this correctly, should be able to move my character about now using the arrow keys. So let's just see. Let's hope that's true. There we go. Okay, so I'm pressing left, I'm pressing right, holding up, and I'm holding down. There we go. So that's very basic movement, and that's just going to be the end of this first tutorial for you. Okay, thank you very much for watching.